The coordinator of the Milwaukie Poetry Series. Welcome to our May reading of the Milwaukie Poetry Series. We are very excited tonight to have the Oregon Poet Laureate with us, Anis Mojgani, which is wonderful for us to see. Thank you all too for being here and for logging in for this reading. It is virtual, as you know, and we hope everyone is safe and well during this time of the pandemic. I want to say a few things about some of the additional events that are coming up. At the Milwaukie Poetry Series, we have started our first Fridays, which go May through October. So the next one is going to be the first Friday of June, which is June 4th, and featured readers will be from the Eugene Poetry Group, and then we will have an open mic after that. Our poet who will be here with us in June is the Oregon Poet Laureate Emerita, Paul Ann Peterson. And then Emmett Wheatfall is going to be here in July. So we're very excited about all of that. Before I introduce our poet tonight, let me make some thanks. The first is to the city of Milwaukie, who has been supportive of the Milwaukie Poetry Series from the beginning. And we are in our 14th season and very, very grateful. Secondly, thanks to the Ledding Library. We are a committee of the Ledding Library in Milwaukie, and that's been a wonderful relationship. And what the library contributes to the community is just outstanding. Next is thanks to the Milwaukie Poetry Series Committee. So we do have an active committee that works on this, and really, as we all know, and I do say, you don't have something like this happen unless you have a group of people who are working on it. And finally, we want to thank the Willamette Falls Media Center. We are here at the Willamette Falls Media Center tonight, and we want to thank Joshua Reynolds, who is our tech guru and the person who really makes this all go and makes this all possible. So thank you again for spending some of your time with us tonight to log in to hear this live stream reading of the Oregon Poet Laureate. So, let me introduce him. Anis Mojgani is the current Poet Laureate of Oregon, a two-time individual champion of the National Poetry Slam and winner of the International World Cup Poetry Slam. He has been awarded residencies from the Vermont Studio Center, Caldera, Air Serenbe, the Bloedel Nature Reserve, the Southwester, and the Oregon Literary Arts Writers in the Schools program. Anis has done commissions for the Getty Museum, the Peabody Essex Museum, and his work has appeared on HBO, National Public Radio, and is part of the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day series, and in the pages of the New York Times, Rattle, Platypus, and various other publications. Known for his performance and well regarded for them the world over, Anis has performed at hundreds of universities across the U.S., festivals around the globe, such as the Sydney Writers Festival, Jamaica's Calabash Festival, and Seoul's Young Writer Festival, and for audiences as varied as the United Nations and the House of Blues. The author of 5 books of poetry and the libretto for sanctuaries. His first children's book is forthcoming from Chronicle Books. Originally from New Orleans, Anis lives in Portland, Oregon. So there will be some more information on the credits after the reading about where you could get information and books of Anis's. You can learn more about him too at his website. We will be having a Q&A period after the reading. So if you have a question that you want to ask him, put it in the chat. And depending on how many questions are in the chat, we'll see how many we can get to after the reading. We're excited about this, so join me in welcoming our poet for the evening, the Oregon Poet Laureate, Anis Mojgani.
Hello, thank you, Tom. Hello, everyone out there. My name is Anis, and I'm going to share some poems with y'all. I had a pocket knife once, back when I was not much older than you are. I cut my thumb the first time I closed it. The second time I closed it, I cut the other. It slept on the windowsill beside my pillow. It was precious like a secret that sat in plain sight. Every fall the leaves would turn brown and the wind would sweep them south in the Gulf. Every spring they would return with the geese and with the grasshoppers in their mouths. In winter I drew on the frost of the glass. In summer I ate popsicles on the front steps. Every night I would pray, not for things or people, but for whatever power that turned the machinery of earth and stars to make of my heart a lamp, glowing with light. I raced a crawfish. I had a birthday cake with dinosaurs on it. My mother marked my growth in pencil on the door frame. My eyes were dark and wet marbles, and they traveled with me, back and forth, between this world and others. Come closer. Come into this. Come closer. You are quite the beauty. If no one has ever told you that before, know that right now you are quite the beauty. There is joy in how your mouths dance with your teeth. Your smiles are simply signs of how sacred your life actually is, so step into it. Come closer. Know that whatever God might be, they asked the world around them to help them make something of worth. They woke from dreaming, scraped the soil from spaces stuck somewhere inside themselves, made you and were happy. You make that Lord happy. Come into this. Come closer. Know that something softer than us, but just as holy, planted pieces of itself into our feet that we might one day dance our way back. Know that you are almost home. Come just a little bit closer. There are birds beating their wings beneath your breastplates. Gentle sparrows that ache to sing. Come aching hearts. Come soldiers of joy, doormen of truth. Know that my heart was too big for my body, so I let it go. And most days this world thins me, to where I'm just another cloud, forgetting another flock of swans, having shaved off so many of my corners that I felt at home only in the shape of a ball, bending myself so far backwards that the song of my mother believed I was returning home. But believe me when I tell you that somehow my soul still manages to squeeze itself into very narrow spaces. Place your hand beneath your head when you sleep tonight. Perhaps you will find it there, making beauty as we sleep, making beauty as we dream, making beauty as we turn over. When we turn over in the ground, may the ghosts that we've asked our answers of do that turning, kneading us into crumbs of light and into this loved thing called life. Come into it. Come, you wooden museums, gentle tigers, little giants. I see teacups upside down, glowing across your grins. Your hearts are like my hands. Some days all they do is tremble. I am like you. I am just like you. I too at times am filled with so much fear, but like a hallway must find the strength to walk through it. Walk through this with me, through this church of blood, bone, and muscle that is ours. There is a doorknob that glows like chance before you. Grab it, turn and pull, step through, back straight, chin up, eyes open, hearts loud. Walk through this with me. Walk through this with me. It's so strange, always, this entire year, to do readings in spaces where there are very few or zero people. And my words are just going somewhere into the void. But after now a year and some months, this is the first reading that I've gotten to do that was not in my home and live and like a full set, a full show. So getting closer, I think, bit by bit to bodies sharing a space and not simply the void and invisible spirits, souls unseen. But that being said, thank you so much for tuning in wherever you may be and joining us this evening. Some years ago, a friend of mine had posted this photograph on their Facebook of a lemon tree. And the lemon tree was in this tiny pot seated on a kitchen windowsill. And it had this caption that read, "See the lemon tree I grew from a seed, how big you've gotten." And I first thought, what a sweet sentiment that is. And then my second thought was, what a stupid sentiment that is. And I find myself swinging, as I'm sure many folks, if not all of us do, swinging back and forth between that which is sweet and stupid in our lives, and that which is loud and quiet, and that which we love and that which we hate. and falling either somewhere in between all those things or holding them all at the same time. And I sat down and I wrote some poetry. This is called Today's Love is Brought to You by the Letter John Sands. And John Sands is a really wonderful poet who lives in Brooklyn, who hails from the state of Ohio. And John has this ability in his poems that when I hear them, they fill me with some sort of golden light, some sort of golden power that makes me feel like I could pay my rent by showing my landlord a brand new dance move. And there was something about this poem that after I wrote it, it felt like maybe it was a poem that was written under the shade of a John Sands tree. So today's love is brought to you by the letter John Sands. High five me with your heart. High thousand me with your hearts. I know you have many of them. We all love many things. I love biscuits. I love little pancakes. I love cheeseburgers. I've loved more than just things that I chew with my mouth. I did love my wife. Sometimes I would chew my wife's shoulder in my mouth. Sometimes my wife, she was annoyed by this, but still, sometimes my wife did love me back. Some things that I have loved will never love me back. Random racist upon the street, while your rhetoric may anger me, I still have love for you, though you probably will not love me back. Walrus, I love you. Though were I to be around you, you would probably gore me with your tusks. Perhaps this is not a good example, as the wild unknowing of wild creatures is not necessarily the same as not loving something back. Perhaps also because I actually do not love the walrus, but simply mention him here because there is a small figurine of a walrus on the coffee table as I write this poem. However, I do love the elephant. I love the elephant. However, he too would probably gore me with his tusks. Again, not out of unlove, but perhaps fear. I do not love fear, but I respect him, in that he loves me, testing how well I carry the sword of my intent through the land of the midnight farm. The land of the midnight farm, it is a strange and scary place. There are perhaps serial killers and or possums lurking in its darkness. The serial killer may love me, but in no way that I wish to be loved. Their love may involve the removal of my skin and the wearing of it out to the club. The possum may love me, but I do not love the possum. In fact, I hate the possum solely because of how ugly I find the possum to be. And yes, I realize this is a very shallow reason to dislike something, so I'm trying, possum. I'm trying to not love you so much. Instead, possibly just be ambivalent to your existence. But oh, I want to hate you like I hate the thought of bee stings, black people, and beans. I put black people in there just to see if y'all were paying attention. I love black people. I love white people, though sometimes I find both of them to be trifling. Don't get me wrong. The only mother that I've ever had is black. The only wife that I've ever had is white. But damn if we humans aren't a trifling animal at times. But still, I love you. You mountains of trifle and futility, of perseverance and lightness, of incessant rowing towards the sun, even while facing it, wondering why there is no forward momentum. Turn around. Look at my many hands, holding up my many hearts and a many high-five salutation to you, Nina Simone, Paul Newman. So many things in this world I have loved. Rising with the sun, sleeping in late, little pancakes. And though they didn't turn around once when she got gone, my wife's shoulders. These things are how she made me feel. A nuclear reactor power plant, filled not though with any strange harmful energy, but only the energy of the sun. Daisies and golden marbles filled up to the brim. Behind me, there is also a rainbow. The nuclear reactor that I am harnesses the power of that rainbow as well. This is how she made me feel. A great gray stone tall tower that rose out of the ocean. There's nothing around for so far. From the window at the top of that tower, I would watch the waves. I watched the world. There was nothing but ocean stretching for so far. From up there, it looked like the biggest thing in the universe. It was the universe. From my room at the top of that tower, sitting above the universe, watching its drops of water move in unison together, I felt like maybe I was bigger. That was how she made me feel. 17, and running in slow motion through a field lit with light. The dust moving slowly through the air, the sun burning through its tiny bodies. Perhaps it was dust, perhaps it was magic dust. Perhaps this magical dust is what I am made of. I close my eyes, and everything I see floats. That was how she made me feel. I was on a boat. It was night. The world had calmed itself simply to hold me inside all that was darkness, simply to rock me gently. That was how she made me feel. The subway chambers of Moscow, I was vaulted. I had giant chandeliers hanging from my underground ceilings. I glowed with so much light. I was a ballroom for the trains of Russia. If you happened to be a child that had climbed down my steps to enter my body and yell into it, the echoes would hit those vaulted underground ceilings and bounce their way around. This would happen all the time. My dark tunnels were filled with these sounds. That was how she made me feel. Like I would live forever. Like there was nothing that could possibly harm me. My body would always remain young and perfect. There were cities growing inside my chest. The cities all looked like New York in the 50s. The buildings tall enough to scrape the clouds. Every automobile a convertible. The men all wore neckties and hats. The women all had beautiful shapes of color draping them. Someone had saved a baby. There was a parade. Someone had saved all the babies. There was the biggest parade moving inside of me, the sky exploding with ticker tape, strangers on corners kissing. Their kisses are what made me live forever. That was how she made me feel. Like honey and trombones. Like honey and trombones. Sometimes I would lay in the garden and pretend I was a carrot. Sometimes I would curl under the leaves and I became a head of lettuce. Sometimes I would bury my soft paws in the softer earth and I was a rabbit. Sometimes in the garden I was a rock, sometimes wishing I were 2 rocks, sometimes becoming 3 rocks. Sometimes in the garden as a rock I was held cool and smooth in a palm, or warmed from above like the sun. Sometimes in the garden, I would wait hundreds of years, and it was only the wind that touched me. Sometimes I would wait thousands of years, and not even the wind could move me. Sometimes in the garden, night would arrive with an enormous moon glowing like the skin of an orange-skinned woman in a more orange dress, and the night would use that moon to say to me, look, you are like how I am, and see how beautiful my body sometimes becomes. Sometimes I would wait for spring. Always I wait for spring, and for my love to return like it, out of the cold and with flowers on their fingertips. It's interesting, how much I this year have been waiting for spring to surface, as I'm sure many folks have. What a strange, tormented year it's been. So to arrive, not necessarily through it, but have spring show up as it always does, has been, at least for me, such a gift these past few days. More than these past few days. This past, month. This is a poem I wrote last summer while we were, still somewhat in the beginning of making our way through the thick of whatever this new shape that holds us is. This is called July Has Come and Out of June. July has come and out of June, and I would like if you were here and coming to share down this hill, this walk with me, to go and get a croissant to split and then sit with to tell you of the crows yesterday evening. How they roosted high in the willow tree at 27th and Stevens. They called aloud and sounded out like children, sleepy yet speaking in the days disappearing. Telling you such, perhaps while we watch the morning gentle itself over the sky and listen to the flicker climb across the fence before lifting to flight. How bright her body when she goes, her feathers red like a mango. While this world collapses, that world continues. Summer arrived so quick and so slow, also to come, as if he had arrived in the night as we slept and had crawled into the bed in the quiet room where we don't often go. And so we chose to let him be. Don't wake him just yet, we'd say. And a month had passed with summer asleep. And then one morning he was up before us, paper in hand, coffee in cup, wondering where we have been, and we, touchless, had no answer to give, except, watching the buds of the silver maple outside become, while a branch of the tree fell just 2 Saturdays past. I know not what to do these days with my skin, and the questions it carries for me for it, how to carry my body with its color of coffee after milk and not before. During this time, in this country, amongst this silence and that loudness, I touch myself with memory, but am lusty only out of boredom and a lack of being held, an absence of love. I wish you were here in my room, with the daylight too. I want to eat a mango from out of your mouth. I'd written, if anyone has shared this poem just recently, and I was saying this to folks that were in attendance, that, anyone who has spent, usually even just a small amount of time with me, will learn very quickly that I use the phrase 10-4 often, as in okay, as in gotcha, as in heard and understood. And so some years ago, and I've been saying this for 20 something years. It's been part of my colloquialisms. And a couple years ago, a few years back, 2 of my friends, after many, many years of me speaking using this terminology, both randomly decided to make the same joke in the same year, where they wished me happy Anis Mojgani Day. And I was like, I got these 2 separate texts from them. And I was like, what do you mean happy Anis Mojgani Day? It's October, it's not my birthday's in June. And they're like, October 4th, 10-4, Anis Mojgani Day. And so then it became this sort of thing amongst my friends, and then on social media amongst people that I know, where Anis Mojgani Day would be celebrated on October 4th. And so usually on that day, I tongue-in-cheek give suggestions for what folks can do. And this poem was birthed out of a few of those that I spread out on Twitter one year. And then at some point, I think maybe last year or the year before, it started becoming something different. And I'm excited to actually read it tonight because I just put up this big version of it up on these windows over in Portland on the east side of the Burnside Bridge. There's a building there with these windows facing the bridge, and on the south side of the street, an agency called OMFG Co. And so we printed out a giant copy of this poem and put it up in the window. So if you find yourself on the Burnside Bridge, sitting in traffic and wondering what to do, take a look out your right side window and perhaps read a poem. Eat something sweet today. Look at a bird. Smile at that bird. Pick up a leaf if it strikes your fancy. Doodle a dirty cartoon. Sext the moon. Record a song you shall share with no one. Have a nap somewhere, especially if it does not seem like it would be a comfortable place in which to dream. Dream in uncomfortable places. Grieve in houses of joy. Laugh in the graveyard, and not because you were dark and angsty, but because these ghosts got jokes. Laugh at what our ghosts are sharing with us. Smile at their birds. Read a book you loved when you were 11, that you loved when you were 9, that you loved when you were 60. Dance like a song you only know by following its invisible notes taking shape around you. Start a letter to someone you have wronged. Be pained in the pain you once left in them. Feel as small and strange as that pain may make you feel. Do not send that letter. Start again. Start 100 letters. Begin 1,000. Finish twice. Draw the perpetual smiling beak of a gull upon the stones in your heart. Release those gulls. Let the feathered stones of your heart dance between air and sea. Look how light you are. What space that exists between your heels and the exuberance of the earth. Talk on the phone with someone whose voice you do not remember the timbre of. Be reminded of their timbre, of their guffaw and song and silence. Cherish all three, the guffaw, the song, the silence. Let them trade no places, but sit together in the same space every day. Lay your wounded self underneath the pitcher's healing kiss. Sliced palms held under the water. Hold a pomegranate in your blood. Color it redder. Split the fruit open. Eat something sweet today. Smile at a bird. Sweeten your mouth with that which our world gives, giving and giving and giving to us. So, one of the things that that's continuously strange to me after this year and some change of reading poems alone to people is like the space between the poems and the moments after the poems of saying thank you to emptiness, which saying that sentence out loud, perhaps there's definitely lessons to be learned and garnished from saying thank you to emptiness. But it is definitely a very, very odd thing at times. So I live in Portland, Oregon. It has been a year since I've been the Oregon Poet Laureate, which is bananas to me. And I think perhaps most bananas simply because, it's bananas to me that I live in this state. I didn't move here to move here. I moved here to take a break from the tired frustration of New York City, which is where I was living, and came out here to be with my closest and dearest friends, and just stayed. And I'm from New Orleans, and growing up down south, I'm sure I knew as much about a state in the top left corner of the country as any kid growing up in the top left corner of the country knew about a random boot-shaped state at the bottom of the U.S., which for me was not much at all. So it still kind of boggles my mind that I live here, that I love this place, and that I get this gift and this honor of serving as laureate of poetry in this state that I live in. But this is a poem that I wrote some years ago about growing up down in New Orleans. And it's called 4 Stars. There was a wasp nest on the back porch. It looked like dead honeycomb. Outside was a hornet's hive. I stuck my hand out there. The sun buzzed loudly. Nothing could bite me. A caterpillar did. I climbed its tree. It kissed me with its back. Its hair was sharp enough to leave 4 stars spinning in my palm. The world spun through my arms and crashed onto our street, so I picked it up. At the back of the backyard was a tin shed falling apart. Inside it, I swear there was a giant sleeping. I woke him, told him my dreams, and let him humming back into our yellow kitchen. The countertops were always covered with topsoil. My mother, she loved to garden and to collect marbles inside of mason jars. We were never allowed to touch them. I loved the smell of the air conditioner. There was a window unit in the dining room and another in my parents' bedroom. Putting my face in front of its vents made me feel like Sunday. I could bike the whole square of the block in 2 minutes flat. My friends Jalal, Putt, and Rue, they lived around the corner from us. There was a tree in front of their house, too big to be a birch. My friend Semendar lived 2 fence hops away. His mother showed mine what God looked like. God, he smelled like my father. Both their beards were black bears. Me and Mom, we went fishing in the park. I caught 2 catfish and waited for them to die. They swam in circles inside our refrigerator until they did, because no one had ever taught me how to kill anything. In Mississippi, we ate every single perch that I caught. The grasshoppers there, they're the size of an almond joy. My sister, she had a pet rat. Part of his ear was gone. His name was Pierre. I named my pet mouse after a favorite book, Charlotte's Web. She is buried under a white rock in the backyard. The day our dog died, Pops found him hanging from the clothesline. I cried into my pillow. I was 10 years old. I could fit under the house. My knees didn't care. Neither did the dark. After the tub, the hallway from the bathroom to mine was a dark tunnel that breathed only to swallow me whole. I shivered and was more afraid of that walk than anything ever since. Even now, there are moments where it still shakes me. But there were times when the night sat beside me on my bed quietly, like it was a big man who had to do what I told him to do. He was too dumb, or he loved me too much. Either way, he had the same smile. I ain't never been stung by a bee before. Not my whole life. Not my whole life. So I wrote that poem a spell ago, and it kind of stuck around doing something that I didn't know it was doing. And some years later, I was working on a new book, and this book here called The Pocket Knife Bible, and it felt very closely related to that poem. The whole book is basically about being a kid, being the boy that I was, growing up in New Orleans, processing the world around me. And then at some point in the book, it basically the boy enters into this dream world where he encounters, unbeknownst to him, he encounters this adult who, unbeknownst to him, is his grown self. And the grown self also does not know that he's encountering himself as a boy. So I was going to read a little bit of that, of this book. Magnolias cover the ground. The sidewalk in front of the Ferret mansion is made of bricks, and the bricks are all out of order and covered in moss. The mansion is the biggest house in New Orleans. It's spooky. Its yard is like a jungle, and there's so many magnolia trees on its sidewalk that even in the daytime it is dark. We hold our breath when we walk past in case there are any ghosts around, but it's hard because the magnolias smell so sweet, and the whole block smells like them, and it's my favorite smell. Their petals are soft and white like butter left out. They feel like my baby brother's cheeks. In January, the porch freezes. Me and Shoke, we use our shoes to skate across the ice before school. On cold mornings, Mom makes oatmeal. On cold mornings, she lays my pants over the heater while I stay under the covers. I can see my breath move out of my mouth. It's like having a superpower. I breathe on the window and turn the glass a different color. I move my finger across it and draw a giraffe. You can only see it when there's something dark on the other side. This is also like a superpower. Me and Mom and Shoke, we plant a tree in front of our house. We have a new brother. His name is Nason. He's like a sailboat, a chubby sailboat. His name means spring rain cloud. Shokafe means blossom. I don't know what Parviz means. He's just Pop. I don't know what Terry means. She's just Mom, or Carolyn if she's talking to Aunt Diane or Aunt Lynette. I don't like my name. It is only 4 letters, but still sounds all corners and clumsy in my mouth, like trying to chew the pieces of a plate, and no one ever says it right. It means companion. I wish my name was Mike. It is only 4 letters and sounds like a knife. Us half-black boys on the block, there are 6 of us. 3 sets of brothers, me and Nace, Semendar and Andalib, Jalal and Payam. We have no backboards. The blacker boys build their own with the telephone pole. They nail a milk crate into the trunk with the bottom punched out. We throw the football instead. Me and Sam, we pull Japanese plums off the neighbor's tree. They're the size of a fat walnut with a seed the size of a fat acorn. We lick our palms and dress our fingers in their orange skins. Every house has a neighbor with a tree, and every tree reaches over the walls. We stain our shirts with their juice. We eat until our bellies hurt. Me and Sam, we're the same color as each other. Both of us have a black mom and a Persian dad. Both of us are small and skinny and brown, but when we sit in the branches, it is like we are gods of something. Thank you, out there in the world. What was I going to read? Is it this? Maybe. Yeah. So, I think it was either on Inauguration Day or the day after. I was sitting in my office, which is down, on the southwest waterfront area in Portland, and, just looking out the window. It was like a beautiful day in January, and could see the cars on the road moving beside the water, beside the river, and I ended up writing this. There are still people I do not know getting married to each other, showing on their Instagrams the ring to people they love, but also to strangers like me. Maybe giving them a smile out of the blue, and hot damn, if you look out the window, you might see as I do the sun, catching a lift on the side of a car, its frame in motion, now emblazoned with light that arrives to us from a hot ball of gas, breathing heat in outer space, and the cars on the highway move like a flock that do not know they have a flock, are heading south or north, maybe east and west at the same time, perhaps combined, but whatever compass point it may be they are moving in the direction of towards, maybe driving like here beside a body of water, whether river or canal or lake or puddle or even cloud, for what is a body of water, as the road beneath it perhaps curves, its passengers sitting in the car like they were the hearts of this machine that carries them skyward, and I can chart their flight from my side of the river, my side of the cloud, as easily as the birds that flap above us, writing poems with the wings of their bodies across the page of our sight, can see me below them, writing poems with the wings of yours. Recently, Michael Collins passed away, and he, for those of you unfamiliar with that name, he was the third member of the original moon landing. So not Neil Armstrong and not Buzz Aldrin, but the one that sat in the pod alone. And I remember coming across some years ago something that how folks would say that the loneliest person in human history was Michael Collins, and he did not agree with this. He brought up the fact that to be alone does not necessarily mean to be lonely. But I remember first coming across that statement, and I thought, oh, that's such a beautiful and hilarious and sad and true feeling statement. The thought of three humans bonding and working together to be launched off the planet into the emptiest, vastest, most silent place that any of us as people can feasibly comprehend. And while those three are in this body of nothingness together, two of them then ditch the third to float there alone. And I mention him now because I mention him in this poem, but I don't mention his name, and sort of use the fact of his slight anonymity compared to, say, his compadres as a joke. So I always like to honor up Michael Collins' name because he went to space and saw things that none of us have ever seen, and all I do is sit in coffee shops and write poems. In my underwear, I write poetry. Two-headed poetry, three-legged poetry, poetry with tin spigots and no training wheels. There are flames airbrushed across my back, and I have bare feet. I have bare feet. Her feet. Speak up, I walk with sticks in my ear and I'm filling twigs with sentences, filing my nails down with memories. My love, it can shave diamonds. Scientists speculate over it. I come from the moon. Neil and Buzz and that third guy, they walked across my tummy. I giggled and a spoonful of cherub tasted like cherries and wallabies. I write 2 underwear poems. My poems take off both underwears and it's naked around the candelabra in the living room. I am writing wrists and rubber bands on the back of the belly's bathtub. Pressing my lips to the shower curtain, I whisper, the goat man is in the woods dancing. The chupacabra, the bookman, the golden nugget. There is a cloud splintering like a kneecap inside of my leg. Buy me pants, mother. Buy me a hat. My shoulders are shaking. There are moths in them. I am full of love. I was full of love. I carved out pear-shaped slices of it and fed 1,000,000 tired ankles. God sat on my shoulder like a cricket. I swatted a bee like a father's advice and asked for it again. Where can I go when every bridge has wheels running alongside its bottom? But I write poems with no training wheels. I write my skull like it was a color I was picking up and examining inside of my hands for the very first time. Standing at the corner of Central Park East and 63rd Street, I hold an imaginary football like a small child, stand 2 inches in front of a yellow wall and scream directly into the wall's bricks, "Go deep!" And as I fling the pick against the wall, I try to catch my childhood bouncing back at me. Go deep! I'm a 3-headed galumph, a blue giraffe, a water fountain on the moon. Catch me, carbon. Catch me, galumph. Catch me, galumph catcher. Catch me, Lord. Hold me like a bowl, like how the clouds hold the moon, holding the rooftops of this city of me and my memories in my veins. There is a lonely mermaid, murmuring all day long. She sings, such beautiful songs. Her throat is a girl I once knew. Her nose, it is made of silver. Her backbone is a plum. Her backbone is a plum. And should you go, and the snows fall, I will write your name in them. Catch a bird, kiss it, and let it go. I have just a few more for y'all out there in the world, whoever and wherever you may be. This is a poem I wrote a little more than a year ago. I had gone to, I can't remember how to correctly pronounce it, Vashon Island over near Seattle to spend a few days just writing at the house of some friends. And I wrote this poem while I was there. On Vashon. Toby yells out that today he is being a gardener, has already pruned the pear tree that hasn't been pruned in 60 years. And he will soon prune the plum tree to follow, and under the light, the bright light that gives us a blinding sight of, on the other side of the water like a sword, in the fire, a tray of silver serving the sun. Mount Rainier, so blue, almost white, which yesterday Toby told me of being 18 and trying to sleep on the saddle shape at the left of the peak, the wind seeking to blow his attempt off the side of the mountain, which on this weekday morning is so blue it is almost invisible. And so I cannot help but think on the light little blue book Jeffrey once gave to me to read about a mountain that cannot be found because the light bends around it. And the expedition which discovers this mountain, and the author, he never finished writing the book, stopped mid-sentence, rumored as intentional, though he simply died young, though perhaps the world sought to complete his allegories for him, as it does with many things. And so perhaps it is all right, too, that I, small as the book is, did not finish it either. And as Jeff, too, did not finish this life before putting the living down. Perhaps, even if still sad and longing, as I do for my friend, and have every day these last 14 years, perhaps all right, too, that he is now unseen, and that he maybe just became another answer to a bending of the light, is perhaps also all right, especially with all this light today, making me unable to see things that are here, which is sort of a way of being able to see the things that are not, and holding all this in me while not thinking it, I say out loud to Toby in response, what a lovely answer to the day. Today I am being a gardener. To work with what the earth works on, and to work with one's hands, to work with the sun touching one's hands, touching always one's livingness. How lovely to work on this something that, yes, too, we might never be finished with either. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Thank you so much to the Milwaukie Poetry Series for having me. It's nice to drive here to Oregon City, where I've never been, to read poems into this microphone, broadcast to whatever ears and laps are enjoying them at the moment. So yeah, these are my last 2 poems, and thank you so much. Hopefully you'll stick around for questions and answers. Oh, lemon tree, I grew from a seed. How big you've gotten. You were so little when you were a seed, and now so big. And soon you will carry such round and lovely lemons, yellow and dimpled, When they grow too big for your thin branches and they leave this kitchen of mine, ask them not to forget it. This kitchen of ours, it is my favorite room in the house. And Lemon Tree, when you pick up to follow, please do think of me. I will think of you. Here, when my hands are far too empty and my tongue is far too sweet, I will think of the quiet poem that was your shape. Lemon Tree. Please, bring a scarf with you. Wherever you end up, it may be cold. And if it isn't, perhaps you will one day travel to a place where it is. When you're in your coffin, clanging down the river with all the other coffins in the water of the next world, all of them bumping and jostling against one another, the contents thrown about like riding in a small plane, you'll peek your head up to see what the racket is. You'll see the other coffins. Looking around, you'll see nothing but coffins and river and two banks distantly flanking the river and the biggest, tallest dark stretching above. So dark, it feels like this place, big as it is, must be inside some sort of bigger place. There's still stars, though. Wherever this river is, you can still see stars. While looking around, you'll see that there are other heads peeking out of their coffins. You yell across the dark, "You know where we are?" And someone will answer back, "No." "You?" "No," you say back. You ask somebody else, "What about you?" "No, I wonder where this is." And someone else will say, "I don't know, but it's big." And someone else will say, "Yeah, it's vast." And then, depending on what part of the river you're on, someone else may then say, "Yeah, vast like the backside of Sean Brown." And even though no one on this river knows who Sean Brown is, some people on the river will laugh. The chuckles will subside until a quiet sets in over the laughter, a quiet like you sat down in somebody else's church. And someone will then ask someone else, "Where are you from?" And they will say, "Texas." "What about you?" "Boston." "Boston?" "Yeah, Boston." "I know someone from Boston. Kate Lee." "You know her?" "No." "What about Stephen Ellis?" "Nah, I'm actually in Somerville." "Somerville?" "Yes, Somerville." And someone else will then yell, "Somerville? I know someone in Somerville." "Who?" "Nick Cathcart. You know him?" I do know him." "Yeah? Yeah. Oh man, small world. Yeah, Nicky's a great guy." "He is. I hadn't seen him in 5-10 years, and when I did, he had a first edition of an E.E. Cummings book to give me. Great guy." And the first person may or may not know who E.E. Cummings is, but will still agree that yes, Nicky is a great guy. And then we'll get quiet again until someone else asks, "Where is it that we are?" And no one will answer. A few people shrug. All of you will look into the stars that are collecting overhead. You'll try to think of someone you might know that lives in Somerville or Texas or Florida or France, just to have something to talk about with a person you never met before, just right now, just to share something in this dark quiet, even though all of you are already sharing the river and the sound of the current bumping all of you into one another. And you'll wonder where the water is taking you and how long it will be before it brings you there and what there will be like. If it'll be like here on the river with all of us sitting in our boxes trying to split the dark by sharing our voice with others. If it'll be like how it was in the world before this one. Thank you very much.
Anis, thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
So much. A doorknob that glows. Golden light. I glowed with so much light. Honey and trombones. This new shape. 10-4. Lemon Tree, bring a scarf with you. So, thank you so much for a very, very rich reading that you've given us.
Well, thank you.
We appreciate it a lot, and I'm imagining prolonged applause. That's all. We're all hearing prolonged applause.
Fantastic.
From the from the
That's what
people
I like to
that have been watching.
I like to hear that prolonged applause.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, this was terrific.
Thank you.
We've got some questions and answers, and my lovely wife Jane is here, is the other person in the studio audience with us. And why don't I start and really ask you to talk about who you feel has influenced you as a poet and who you're reading.
Over the years, it's been a number of of influences. I mean, early on, as a young reader of poems and a young writer of them, I think probably like many young writers in this country, I very much fell in love with a lot of the beat poets, Gregory Corso and Kerouac, and and the thing I think that influence-wise that really spoke to me from them was, because it was very early that I was writing poems. Reading some of their work, I was taken aback at some of the things that were in them. Like I was like, what if Alan's mom reads this, And I remember feeling that I wanted to use poetry like that, how I felt that they used it, that it was a manner in which to step boldly into the person, into the people that we are, without shame, without fear, without guilt, that even if our days in this world around us fed those things into us, at least poetry could serve as a tool to release those things from oneself. And so that was a really big early influence, was just having that realization that that's what poems could be used for. Over the years, a really big influence and love of mine is a poet named Frank Stanford, the poet Richard Brautigan. I came late to Lucille Clifton in my life, but I adore her work. Really big fan of Kevin Young. Jericho Brown's book from 2 years ago now. When was it that came out? I think it came out in 2019 and won the Pulitzer. The Tradition is such a beautiful book. Ilya Kaminsky is a poet I love. Anne Sexton is a poet that I've loved. And whom I'm reading right now, I was just recently reading a lot of Joy Harjo because I was doing a conversation with her a few weeks ago. So that was a beautiful opportunity to get to read just so much of her work. And also just recently, two friends of mine who are both poets, but both these books are nonfiction books. Hanif Abdurkib and Clint Smith, they both have 2 new books out that I just recently read. And other than that, I don't know, I read a lot of kids' books, a lot of picture books, a lot of middle grade novels. That's what I read a lot of these days.
Boy, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I talked a little long, as I'm prone to do, even more so in the pandemic.
Well, off the chat, the poetry box, the Poeming Pigeon, says applause, applause, applause.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, the pigeon.
Carolyn Martin says, incredible performance. Wow.
Well, thank you, Carol.
Yeah, with an exclamation point. And I'm going to check if Jane has any questions.
Well, I was curious what got you started writing poetry, and you've answered it to some degree, but what was the very first thing you did that got you started into poetry?
The first thing was, it was my senior year of high school, and I had a number of electives, and I'm a visual artist, and that was the thing that I did then. I didn't write, and I was planning to go to art school. And so that last year of high school, I loaded up on a lot of art classes, but I still had room for something. And so I was like, I'll take this creative writing class. And one of the components of the year was poetry, and it opened up this world, I think that the majority of us, our relationship to poetry, is one that starts in perhaps kind of a strange, fanciful, silly manner. And then as we move through school, it's something that our teachers only have so much time to share with us. And so traditionally they have taught us things that for many of us were not the things that spoke to us, that did not speak to who we were and where we come from. And getting to take a creative writing class in which just getting to read so many more poets, especially getting to introduce to poets that were still alive and poets that were publishing poems then right then and there. It was like, oh, wow, and having the opportunity to explore a new part of the creative playground that before I'd always stayed over in this other section was the thing that kind of like introduced me and awakened something that was like, oh, well, here's a whole new way in which that I can seek to express the things that I'm trying to express.
Boy, thank
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Some more comments from the chat. Brandon Brown says,
Oh, Brandon.
so grateful for Anis's presence in Oregon. What a time to serve as Poet Laureate. Thank you very much. Andrea Hollander was with us. And say thank you, Andrea, for your comments. And one of the things she ends with, yes, step into the people that we are. Something I wanted to ask you a little bit more about is that I thought that several times you talked about light. You had a doorknob that glows, and you had an internal light. You had I glowed with so much light again, as contrasted to dark tunnels. And could you talk a little bit more, or is there more to say about the theme of an internal light for you?
The world that I was raised inside of, which I feel fortunate for, and I tend to carry and note as one of the privileges that I had, is I was raised in a household, in a community that believed in the inherent nobility of every person, so that is a thing that is perhaps like the strongest cornerstone in my foundation of living, and so I always I think am seeking to find the ways in which that which is in me that is light is able to come out. And I don't know, I think often about the relationship of space and the relationship of light and dark, and how so much of the world that we live in, so much of like our culture in this country is so connected to these ideas of a binary, these ideas that it has to be this or it has to be that, and there's nothing that's in between. And the thing that I think is so beautiful about being a person is that we need that which is known, that which is held in the light, and we need that which is unknown, that which is held in the dark. Both those things define the other and shape the other. That like nothing, this podium that I'm standing at, it cannot exist without the space that surrounds it. That's what defines it. So I tend to try to walk my way through life by trying to make space for like both these things at the same time. That which is light, that which is dark, that which is known, that which is unknown, and finding the way that they can support and push each other.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
You're welcome.
I've got two more questions from the chat. And why don't we think about if there is a poem that you haven't read that you'd like to read to conclude with after we take two more questions from the chat.
All right, I'll run that around in my head.
So just while we're talking about these, give some thought to that.
Will do.
Andrea says, she asks, were you able to give any live readings in Portland before the pandemic hit?
Before the pandemic, as Poet Laureate, no. I became Poet Laureate on May 4th. And so my first reading as Poet Laureate, I think, was May 5th, and it was for the organization Artslandia, and through my computer sitting in my living room. But I've lived in Portland off and on now since 2004, and so I've definitely though in recent years I don't get to do a lot of live readings in Portland because I spend a lot of time on the road, and so when I'm at home, I kind of just want to be at home. But I do on occasion do live readings, and I'm definitely itching to do some right now. You know, like as soon as, one of the things about the pandemic that unfortunately, over this last year, haven't had the energy to explore creatively the things that I would like to explore. But being in a pandemic, like what that means for how we approach the art of performance and the art of live shows, how to do that safely and respectfully, while also using that as a means to explore something new creatively is really exciting. And so while we're still in this weird nebulous of a pandemic, I am excited to start whenever that might be, doing live shows in the city where I live.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Final question from the chat. Another one from Brandon. Where is the weirdest place you've ever written a poem?
Weirdest place I've ever written a poem?
Written.
Oh,
a poem.
snaps. Oh, man. I don't know. I'm pretty meat and potatoes when it comes to where I write my poems. I for years, I now have been a touring poet for 15 years. And in that time, I still have never felt like I've cracked the code of writing while on the road. And so, traditionally, it basically is like me sitting at some coffee shop writing, maybe me in my house writing. The weirdest place, I'm trying to think what's places that I've been that I ended up writing a poem. I don't even know. I feel on the spot. I'm like, oh man, what is this place?
Well, you might want to think about it.
I'll have to think about it.
Yes. Because
And I'll tell you when I see you next. And
you can
then I'll
also
blast it out online, let everybody know.
You can also let me know, because Anis did read the poem tonight that is the broadside, which is a hymnal, the wonderful poem that he read first. And we're going to send that out to all of you who registered for this event with a thank you, and we'll include a copy of the broadside poem. So,
Sweet.
if you want to think about it overnight
Will do.
and let me know,
Let you know, just send out to the masses.
I will include that.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Have you given some thought to a poem you'd like to end with?
Yeah. I think I know which one. Make sure that I have it. I wrote this poem at the behest of the Times in November had invited laureates around the country, the New York Times, to offer up poems of gratitude. And so I wrote this, and because this year has been such a strange one in that there's so much grief in it, and so much grief in it that I don't think we have been allowed to process. Because we, at least in our country, I don't think know what to do with grief. But also, there's been no time and space to just process anything that's happening. But amongst all that, there's also been I think these really beautiful gifts. I think about a year ago, just the quietness of my spring in 2020, getting to have a new type of relationship with my neighborhood and walking through it. And so there's definitely things that I think that I was very thankful for. And this speaks to some of that. Thankful for the bend without the break. Thankful for the branch beneath the weight of the finch, light-boned they be. The shake of a fir to alight a sky. Thankful for the earth, for still having not released us from its embrace. Its rivers that peak those stars on clear nights, swimming through both. Thankful for the crows consistent in their caw, as if saying, wake, the morning lies in the street, wanting of me to be bronzed with its kiss. Thankful that every day in my city, the people strengthen together because they see one another. gather for something unseen and powerful, thankful for prayers made into action for strangers, fists raising in the name of another, hands giving to the other, thankful for somewhere in the distance, the ocean calling like an answer, lifting towards a grace, spoken aloud for someone else. This grace, white-capped, green deep, and full of song, coming back to return that which had been tossed, from where it had been thrown, but to touch our tired feet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anis. Prolonged applause.
Yes,
Thank you for being here.
yes.
Thank you all for being here who are on the live stream. Paul Ann Peterson is going to be here in June. We'll hope to see you then. For now, good night.